Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Hapitalist. I'm with my new friend, Wes Towers. Wes, how are you doing today?
Really well, Russell. It's good to connect from the other side of the planet. If you believe it's a globe, who knows?
I mean, I believe everything's a flat circle. So, you want to tell
Yeah,
us a little bit about yourself before we get started?
yeah, sure. So I run a digital agency, Uplift 360 here in Australia, and so we do websites and optimization and all that fun stuff, mainly for trades, construction, industrial brands. So it wasn't always that way. Weren't always niched, but I just discover the niche found me more than anything else. So it's been a wild journey. Business has been operating more than 20 years now. So yeah, good times.
Yeah, I did some looking up on you before we started, and you changed the name of your company about 8, 9 years ago. And in the
Yeah.
announcement of that, you said that you were a website marketing zealot. What is a market
Yeah.
website marketing zealot? And are you still a website marketing zealot, even after all of the new stuff that's come around in the last decade-ish?
Yeah, yeah, I forgot about that title I gave myself. I don't know where it came from. I suppose I had a religious upbringing, so maybe that was part of it. But the zealot is kind of really passionate about what they do and potentially thinking about things in slightly different ways to other people. That's the way I saw it. So I don't know if it resonated necessarily with the market, but it's the way I thought about business anyway, thinking about, hey, what can I do somewhat differently? And it doesn't have to be completely differently, but I think those key distinctions that make you in the marketplace are what people end up buying. Either they buy into it or they buy out of it, and that's completely fine. Not everyone's going to be attracted to you as a person, and therefore they're not going to be attracted to your business sometimes. So that's okay. I think that's okay to not appeal to everybody.
Well, it's required. I mean, it's almost required now, right? Like,
Yeah,
I, okay, so 9 years ago, I've been doing this for a long time. Somewhere around 20 years and seven businesses ago, I've been doing this kind of work. And it seems like there's been 9 million revivals of a website in the past 10 years, like, and changes where it's gone from website centric to blog centric to social media centric to podcast, and it's sort of moved the needle of what you're supposed to do
yeah,
has moved. But looking up your company, you have stayed pretty consistently like website centric, it seems. What makes you
yeah,
what makes you so confident that websites are the defining feature of like a business? Or is that even
yeah.
true?
Yeah, well, I think it's the one territory you control, the messaging. So everywhere else, it feels like it's just noisy places. Particularly if you think about, social media is probably one of the first things we think about if we're thinking about online, because a lot of us are addicted to that stuff and doom scrolling and all that kind of stuff. And there's just so many distractions, and it feels as though it's eroding our capacity to even concentrate on something. Our attention
Mhm.
spans are zapped, our brains are fried for all these reasons, and that's because there's just so much noise out there. So they'll see your post, and then next second they're seeing something else. But your website is you control the message, and you've got their attention for a slightly longer time. And if they've spent the time to come to your website, they're probably more engaged and ready to buy something. And at the end of the day, business needs someone to buy something eventually sometime. So they're probably closer to that pointy end where they're ready to make a decision. So you can control the whole message, you control the styles, everything that you want them to understand. Now that most of them are not going to read word for word everything you publish, they're going to glean through and find the thing that they're interested in. So you need to find a way to guide their eye through those core messages that you want them to understand as a priority, but you want them to be able to take action. So what's the next logical step that someone's going to take? So I believe in social media marketing and all the other avenues, advertising, etc. But when they get to your website, they're so close to buying. They're ready to oftentimes ready to make that decision. That's where we want to spend. That's where we invest our time for our clients.
Yeah, so I thought something you said recently was really interesting. You had said that when you something around the lines of when you do a website audit, we think over time that we should keep putting more and more and more and more and more stuff
Yeah.
online, but like really it's about cutting more and more and more and more away so you can get to the core of the message. Could you talk a little bit about that? Because I'm a loquacious bloke who likes going long on stuff and
Yeah.
that I have a lot of feelings about this.
Yeah. Well, yeah, so that's right. So there's that temptation that as businesses evolve and you introduce new products or service and offerings, you add them into your site, but you never remove old ones. And so a confused mind can't make a decision. And as I said before, that our attention span is evaporating. It feels like really fast. So you've really got to grasp people's attention. So if you're spreading your message too far and wide, then they're just not grasping any of it. So yeah, I think that now I wish I could remember there was a famous quote from an artist or a designer rather. I think he might have been German, and he spoke about design being um, how did it go? Something along the lines of design's finished when you've removed everything that doesn't need to be there, sort of thing. And that's an interesting way of looking at it. Obviously, an engineer type designer is thinking about the pragmatic, practical application of what they're doing. An artist is thinking more about the aesthetic. There is balance in all of these things, but I think from a marketing standpoint, to make sure your core message sings the loudest, that's often by removing the peripheral kind of messaging.
Yeah, I think that's the beauty of the 7 word bio, right? It's like you have 7 words and you can say things in 7 words, or
Mm.
you can, I mean, you can say it longer, I guess, if you want, but like the 7 word bio is like, we optimize for joy and make money doing it. Optimize for joy and make money doing it. That's 8 words. But like still, the concept is like, what what is the clearest message that you can give to somebody in the quickest amount of words? Because there's a great book, The Science of Scaling, and it's all about how we think that complexity is how you scale, but like the things that scale are the simplest things.
Yeah, absolutely. I found that I wrote a book years ago, probably 10 years ago now, no, 11 years, something like that. And anyway, I mean, I'm not a proper writer or anything. I've got no experience. I was blogging for a long time before the book, but I had the editor work over it. And that's exactly what they did. They just stripped out, well, they did lots of things to correct my writing style, but the the removal of words that were unnecessary seemed to be a massive thing. I was just putting in redundant words that just didn't need to be there, and instead of improving the depth of the content, it diminished it somewhat. So it was an interesting process to go through that. And obviously, you're an experienced writer. You know all these strategies and so on. I was a complete novice, and I had no understanding of how to go about doing it. So I just
Yeah.
struggled through.
Well, what would you say to somebody who said, okay, so this is a great example because I think that I can say as things as long as I want. And when people say write shorter, right, like I can't write shorter, I say you may not be able to write as long as me, but I'm a great writer. So like I can do whatever I want.
Yeah,
And like, is that I think that we so often are in a position when we master one thing or we're really good at one thing to think
yeah,
that that carries over into other areas. And like, I guess my question is, you work with a lot of pretty successful construction companies and such. How do you get
yeah.
them to eat their words and actually do the thing that you tell them to do? And what do you find that best like, how can you make, I don't want to say make somebody do the thing that you want, but like, how do you make these companies who are very successful do what's in their best interest when maybe they don't want to? Like, what do those
Yeah.
conversations look like?
Yeah, it can be interesting because when, as you say, we focus mostly on websites. So if you don't really have an understanding of the marketing principles and the user experience of a website, all you can do is make decisions based on your personal preference of what looks good. And so what that tends to lead to is designs that are just not as user friendly and practical. And because we've got to think about different screen sizes as well, it's not like a static
Mm.
size, it's fluid and it's moving depending on the screen size. So all of these things for someone who doesn't really know, they make uninformed decisions. So it's about guiding them through those processes and explaining the downside risk of potentially, like there was a couple of weeks ago we did a website and the two directors, I didn't have direct access to the directors, which was making it a little bit tricky. We had a marketing person in the middle within the company, and the two directors were pushing for some sophisticated animation, which is great fun, and we enjoy working on it, but it has no marketing benefit. In fact, it was probably detrimental, likely to be detrimental, just based on our experience. Anything, movement and so on, and can look visually really exciting and creative, but it can, with the logo and things moving and even the navigation moving, it becomes really difficult to navigate. Not really difficult enough to be create
Mhm.
resistance.
Well, literally
And
any
people,
resistance makes people more likely to bounce. So like it's
yeah,
mostly about like the simplest opt-in forms are often the ones that do the best, right? Because they're
yeah,
for no other reason than they load quicker.
yeah, 100%. There's that, and yeah, so people just rush online so much. So yeah, so we were able to talk through and get a balance in that. So we did create some animation because they were adamant that's what they wanted, but they understood the downside and what the potential less conversion rate might be. So they understood that, but they still wanted to go ahead with it because it was important to them, and that's fine. They're making an educated decision around that. So yeah, found a balance. We didn't do as crazy animation as they first was
Mhm.
speaking about. We certainly can. We've got the capability to do so, but we found a balance. And I think that's the creative. That's what makes creativity exciting. It's working within the confinements of whatever it is that you've got to do. And in these instances, it's almost like a collaboration. So you've got tension between, I think the tension between two truths is super exciting. So in this instance, you've got the tension between the creative and the beauty and the excitement, but then you've got the tension on the opposite side, the pragmatic, the goal-oriented. That balance and that tension, I think that's what creates really great work.
Yeah, I mean that's what Frank Gehry said. Frank Gehry did a master class some years ago, the designer of the Walt Disney Concert Hall and the Guggenheim, and he said that 85% of what I do is the same as everyone else. Like I have the same constraints of building codes and gravity and sound and acoustics and all of these things that I have to work inside, and it's in that 15% that I really
Yeah.
can be creative.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? And so we're going to see that in lots of creative endeavors. Obviously, with AI, it's making the technical side super easy, but I think it's going to be the creative artist's mindset that makes all the difference. It's that five, it's probably not even 15%, it's probably 5%, maybe it's only 2%. But that's where the real power is, I think, in the world we're moving into. Those that can think beyond what has been and think about what might be. That's where true value will be, I believe. It's going to be less about the technical, how to do the thing, and more about the thinking behind it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the thing that you develop as an artist, any kind of artist, really any kind of business person, because there's an art in every business, I think, is
Yeah,
you develop the decision. Like every decision is makes every decision you make makes your view unique. And if you don't have, I heard you talk on a lot of AI podcasts, like just like a lot about AI. And I think you said something along those lines where it's like the more AI goes, the more AI becomes the norm, the more the human value, the more we need to rely on the human core values. Is that right?
I think so. I think so because it's the only way in which we can stand out. I mean, if everyone's using the same tools, they're creating the same outputs. If they're relying on the tool and not, leading it if it's leading us rather than we leading it, then we'll create the same outputs, and they'll all be generic and bland and Nobody wants that AI slop. So yeah, we got to think through that and the human connections. I think every society in the world, doesn't matter where, what country you're in and what the background was, there was a level of storytelling to understand how the world works. And so the applying story to your business, and I think that anything that creates a human connection, and that's can be through story and understanding who you are as a person and the nuance in individual people will be the exciting thing. Yeah, so that's what we're working towards, trying to bring that human factor so people know, like, and trust who they're working with and want to work with them. They can trust that they're going to fulfill on the promises. Because you can imagine we're doing, construction company websites. So, that if they're building their dream home, let's say, they want to know they're going to deliver exactly what was proposed, and they're not going to go out of business halfway through the project. That's been a massive problem here in Australia. We had a bunch of businesses go out of business simply because building materials costs went up and they were on fixed contracts. So
Mm,
all of a sudden, these builders are making a loss, and some were able to wear those losses because they're big enough and they worked through the other side and made a profit again. But others just were smashed in the middle. So people halfway built their dream home and then they're left in the lurch. So you want to be able to trust the builder you hire. And that's just
right.
one example. There's going to be lots of industries that are smashed around a little bit with what's going on in the world right now.
Well, I have a question, I guess, on that topic because it seems to me I work with mostly creative entrepreneurs,
Yeah.
and they often have the problem of getting people excited about something that maybe isn't their top priority. And it makes me think of, as I'm talking to you, like probably a construction company doesn't care about their website as their most important thing. They want to build the
Yeah.
thing. They want to like build the product, and they want to like meet the customer and do the arch. I don't know what construction companies want to do, but like I can almost assure you it's not like make a website. Otherwise, they'd be website designers, right? So like, how do you think
Yeah.
about when you are even trying to get people excited about doing this or working with you? Like, how are you getting them hyped on this change cycle that like this should even be a thing? Because I'll be honest, most construction companies that I go to, their websites, look at they were made in 1994 and have never been updated since then.
Yeah. With that, there's benefit in that for me, of course, because they're so far behind oftentimes that they really do need an overhaul. But you're right, they need to realize that that's an important pillar in their marketing if they're involved in marketing at all. So it's like anything, that pain of the marketing not working has got to be great enough so that they take action. It's kind of like that story with the dog that's sitting on the nail on the porch, and he doesn't move because the pain's not great enough. But as soon as the pain builds to a level in which it's great enough, it'll motivate the dog to move off that nail. So it's just like that, if everything's booming and everyone's getting plenty of work, they're not going to update their website. But as soon as things are a bit tough, they're thinking about, okay, where's our next piece of work coming from? What levers can we pull? They're really pragmatic and practical, down to earth people. So they realize, hey, we got to do something to get some leads flowing through the door, maybe adapt the business a little bit if there's challenges and roadblocks with what they normally do, and maybe they pivot a little bit for the short term to get some cash flow happening. And that's sometimes working towards a little bit more maintenance related work just to get something happening. So they haven't got their staff sitting around twiddling their thumbs. They've got something to do in the interim while they work towards some of the bigger projects, which can take a little bit of time, lead time to get them signed off and approved and get working on them. So it's about thinking about that opportunity lost and the cost of having people sitting around twiddling their thumbs. They've got to do something about that, and that's typically marketing to some degree.
Yeah, it's interesting. Because like with creative entrepreneurs, you don't have that pain point problem, right? You don't have like they're not sitting on a nail. No one's sitting on a nail being like, I can't wait for the 15th book in this like sexy romance saga to co like there's not like a pain sitting there. So I'm always really interested to see how other businesses like think about making people want something they don't that they need but don't want, or even
Yeah.
want but don't know they want.
Yeah. That's right. And the other part of the challenge is for those that maybe don't use websites at all, and some people don't anymore, and particularly the founder-led businesses, those that are, they're out in the field on the tools, they're less likely to engage with anything online. Some of the guys that we're working with, they don't have any social media, they don't visit websites. Email is the only kind of online thing that they deal with on a day-to-day basis because it's not part of their world. It's difficult for them to make informed decisions about what they should do to move forward. So sometimes that's a detriment, but sometimes it's a huge benefit because they just know we need something in that space, and they'll hire someone and they'll trust that they're going to get the results. They'll just trust what you want to implement. And that's wonderful when we get that creative liberty to do whatever we know will work for them.
Yeah, awesome. Great. So I want to, one thing that I noticed across all of the interviews that I looked at for you is just you're always smiling. You always like seem like happy and content with whatever the conversation goes. Like this podcast is called Happiness, so like Hapitalist. So we're really interested in like business owners and how
Yeah.
they think about happiness and like contentment and like following their joy. And like, what gives, man? Is it just like Australians seem to be generally happy about stuff, but like, how do you think about how do you think about following your joy when it comes to this? Like, what even led you to like websites being this like thing that you could like talk about for 20 plus years?
Yeah. Yeah, it's thanks, and I appreciate that's a really good observation. I'm pleased that I'm conveying what I feel inside as that the happiness in the business that I work in. And but also I get really juiced about just speaking to people. I love people, so I love engaging with people. So podcasting obviously is awesome because I get to speak to all sorts of people all around the world with different perspectives and views and understanding of what's going on in the world. So that's really cool. So of course I'm at my best in podcasts in terms of happiness. My happiness is elevated at these times. I'm not always smiling all through every aspect of life for sure. But I used to have a little phrase that I'd say to myself that I'm selling smiles, which is an interesting thing. So I think in any industry, it's a big factor in people wanting to choose to work with you is how you make them feel, and smiles are contagious. So I do it naturally anyway. I'm smiling through just, but I realized it was a key distinction when I show up in a boardroom in a meeting that the happiness factor seems to rub off. So I just went with it and I thought, well, this is who I am naturally. I like to talk to these people. I'm having fun. I'm not going to be super serious and regimented in meetings and so on. And people love that. They feel a little bit better in their day. And why be a miserable, really corporate stuffy kind of person when that's not who you are? I think you've got to be authentically who you are, and this is who I am. So that's what I go with.
Yeah, I think that is I think that that is a really astute observation because I find that some people like really resonate with being a stuffy boardroom human, and like that's just kind of, some people like resonate calm and some people resonate joy and some people resonate like determined forthrightedness. And the more you can um figure out what that thing is that makes people resonate. That's the whole, like, we have this thing called the easeful joy loop, and that's the whole like joy loop of, your joy. Just because you have joy that might not be like smiling all the time doesn't mean that
Yeah,
your joy is any less valid than somebody who is doing that, as long as it's really about doing that thing that leads you to joy.
yeah, yeah. It's a really interesting thing. So I was having a chat to my partner maybe a month or two ago, about whelmed. Sometimes you're overwhelmed or underwhelmed, but no one ever says they're whelmed. And I suppose that would be just content and satisfied. And I think that's a good goal sometimes, that balance. But actually, we were at a market and someone had a brand called Whelmed. And I thought, oh, cool. I've never actually seen anyone use the word, but that was their brand, Whelmed. So I think, business can be a roller coaster ride of ups and downs and, everywhere in between. But you've got to find balance and contentment no matter what the circumstances are, kind of like a Zen kind of Buddhist philosophy, I suppose.
Yeah, don't you
Um,
find it hard though? Like most people are vacillating between anxiety and boredom all of the time, that like
yeah.
even just to be able to get to the place where you can be whelmed, most people can't access it because their brain doesn't let them access it.
Yeah, that's true. And certainly not all goals are 100% achievable, but they're still worth working towards to get a little closer, I think. Yeah. So it's hard to get 100% balanced. And as I say, a balanced seesaw is no fun. So you just got to ride the ups and downs to a degree and see it as excitement rather than, you can reshape, I think, tough times into excitement if you're looking forward to the way, way through that and see it as a journey, not a destination.
Oh, you mentioned that the you seem to, I don't want to say counter-cyclically, but like it almost seems like when things are bad in the construction industry, business is good because people are looking for stuff. And when things are booming, it's like harder to get business. So like like how do you like that must mess with your head, man. Like
Yeah,
how do you keep that like
yeah.
level-headedness?
Yeah, there's always someone who needs because there's new in the boom times. What happens is there's new businesses popping up because people see their boss making a bunch of money and they think, oh well, I'll just go and start my own thing. So it's
Mhm.
in those boom times, it's more about new startups and working with them, and that's a whole different beast because oftentimes they're starting with no money and or very little behind them and no business understanding as well. I certainly started with no business understanding, so that's not a knock on them. It's just the nature of you start with a skill set and an understanding of what to do, and you start selling it as a service or a product, and then you soon realize your business skills have massive gaps, and so you end up hiring people to do various things that you need at the time. So and websites are one of those things. So yeah, in the boom times, I'm focused on more of those startups. In the down times, I'm looking at a bigger business that's established that needs to change gears and think about marketing in a whole new way.
And are you doing like are you regularly putting together a plan like every 3 to 6 months of like what the timing is, or like how are you making these hit lists of targets, and like how does I mean, I know there's a lot of designers working on what like they're listening right now that I'm sure are interested in like, cool, I would like to work with businesses in this same way. So like like how do you put
Yeah.
together a plan for assuming someone's like new or maybe just like wants to grow their business? Like how are you putting together a plan for like tackling these times?
Yeah, it'll. I think you've got to work your plans around what works best for you as an individual. For me, if I'm going for the slightly smaller startup business, there's certain networking groups I can go to because I know that's where they're hanging out. That's one of the
Mhm.
first things they'll do is go to some of the local networking groups for business, and they'll be hanging around. So just to meet them there because it's really difficult to find a startup business because how do you find them
Mhm.
until they're publishing something online? So finding them where they're at, and I know that's where they're going to be hanging out. And then if it's boom times, I'll look at. I love networking. Just as I said before, I love people, so it makes sense for me to use it as a strategy. So if it's boom times and I'm looking for a slightly bigger customer client, I'll be going to industry events. So where I know
You
some
mean
of
like
these big
conferences and such?
Yeah, yeah, and they might be specialized for the building industry or, some form of trade or some industrial, we've done a bunch of steel websites, so steel events. They have a body here in Australia with all where all the large players in steel will go to their events. So hanging out where I think for me, hanging out where those people are at the time when I want them is the gold. And because
It's
just like podcasting, I love it. So it's not a burden for me. I mean, it can be later nights because it's working in the evenings, but I love it. So it works for me. But that's not going to work for everyone because some people just don't want to talk to people that much.
Well, it's so interesting because you think that like your business is so online that like you would say you are marketing and targeting and doing all like SEO and
Yeah.
PPC ads and such, but you're saying that like really you're getting in front, your goal is to get actually in front of people where they are, not necessarily like run online marketing ads and fully optimize for them.
Yeah. Well, we do the online piece optimized, but for us, all our competitors are really good at that too. So
Mhm.
it's an incredibly difficult space to do really well. And particularly the ads, you can burn through so much advertising spend. And because all your competitors are doing a really great job, it's incredibly difficult. So I think you've got to be counterintuitive. I think the best successes are always thinking about what everyone's doing and then do the opposite in your industry. So, I mean, as you say, a lot of the construction and trade related businesses, their online experience sucks, really. It's outdated. It's really sloppy. So they've got a gold mine of opportunity online because everyone else is doing a terrible job. And that's a big part of why I think our business is successful, just because there's so many opportunities in an industry like that where just moving a few levers for their website, even if we just give it a bit of a facelift and not a whole new website, they can do incredibly well simply because you've only got to be better than all your competitors. And if you're in a
Right.
small town, let's say, and you're an electrician and there's only one other electrician, well, you've just got to be better than that guy. So that's the way to think about it.
Yeah, I think it's someone said to me recently, they're like, look, I work with bigger companies. I work with companies where if I give them a 1% boost, that's a significant revenue gain for them. And so like if your average client spends $200,000 with like one lead is $200,000, then like you get them
Yeah.
one more lead a year and you charge them 50 grand, like you have given them $150,000 in profit. And we're usually so caught up in I trying to say this in a way that is that I'm just gonna say it. Like we're so caught up in making and having cool business, we don't actually think about like the sustainable business, where it's like
Yeah.
most good business is boring because it's about what you can repeat, right? Like it's about
Yeah.
like okay, like yes, it might be great that you like did fireworks this one time, but like someone's gonna want you to do that again. And like the way you get business is to be like, hey, you did this really cool thing for Bob over here. I want that too. And
Yeah.
like those businesses that continue that repeat, um, they're often not doing sexy work. They're often doing good work that is repeatable.
Yeah. Absolutely. The recurring rinse and repeat style of work is most profitable. And that's why it's helpful to have a team around you who can do a lot of that stuff. So the creative leader can get excited about taking the direction in new paths and new opportunities and all of the fun stuff. But the boring stuff, hopefully businesses can get to a level in which some of the repetitive more boring stuff, I suppose, could be delegated to team. And the good part about humans being humans, there's people out there who don't want to do creative stuff. They just want to do data entry and they don't care. They'll start at 9, they'll finish at 5, they'll churn out the work. That's wonderful that there's humans out there that want to do that stuff because it means people like you and I don't have to.
Yeah, I was at a book signing the other day, and the person who was doing the signing was talking about how much they like repetitive tasks and how much their grandmother was like, you would think they would get bored sewing the same seam, but like there was like they
Yeah.
got great joy doing the same repetitive task over and over and over again. And like my job, my goal, my businesses usually are like the minute I figure something out, I blow it up and torpedo it. And it's like, no, Russell, how do we not torpedo your business anymore? Like next week, just because you're like bored. Um, and so yeah, like I think about this all like everyone is not you. Like
Yeah.
everyone needs the God help the people that are also visionaries and always want to be on to the next thing because someone's sweeping up behind you, like making a fortune on the thing that you set up. And I look back at I'm like, man. I left a fortune behind for all these people's businesses, like these people that could just do that thing over and
Yeah.
over after I like broke the barrier, like making a fortune, like $1 million a month companies. And I'm sitting here
Yeah.
being like, well, yes, but I was bored for a minute, so I blew it up.
Yeah. I got a friend exactly like that. He's got a few businesses, and so he won't spend time in all of them all of the time. He's got to spread himself around, and they're in different parts of Victoria here in Australia, so they're in different locations. But one of the businesses that they always tell him to go away because whenever he comes to town, he breaks everything and makes everything harder than what it needs to be. They want him to stay remote so he keep his hands out of all the systems and everything and cause less chaos. They obviously joking to a degree, but there's an element of truth in it. So for him as a creative entrepreneur, he's always looking at new opportunities and new ways of doing things, and the team just want to stick to what they know works and do best.
Right, because like it's it's at some level like it's about getting revenue and repeat revenue is repeatable. Like the minute that
Yeah,
you like the minute revenue is predictable, it is repeatable. And we as creative entrepreneurs often are like, yes, but like my brain noodle needs to do a new thing. And it
yeah,
is really, I talk to this about this all the time about having people on your team that you can delegate or an AI you can delegate the repetitive tasks to because
yeah,
like then you can be on to the next thing and like you could hire somebody to sweep up after you. Did you know that? Did you know you could hire somebody to sweep up after you and make your thing a business? Like it's called
yeah,
implement. Like the minute I was like, "Oh my God, there are people around that just can like take my chaos and make it work."
yeah,
Changed everything for me.
yeah. Those virtual assistants that can be really helpful. Um, yeah, it's an interesting way to think about. There's just different people. People are wired in different ways, and so it's a real plus when you can get a when you've got a team of people to have a balance of different ways of thinking as well, because they'll just see things differently and they'll be better at different tasks. Um, for me, I like to hang out with other creative minds for fun, and that's enjoyable. But I'm so pleased that there's other people that I wouldn't necessarily hang out as friends. But I enjoy their company, but I wouldn't hang out with in my spare time as friends. But it's so wonderful that they exist to do some of these things. They just different people.
Yeah, man. I mean, my wife and I talk about spreadsheets all the time. And I was told her once, I was like, yeah, spreadsheets are boring. And she's like, never say that in my presence again. I was like,
Yeah,
this is why it's great that you do like I come along and I have a great idea and then I like initiate it and then you research it and we both are in our zone of genius even in this relationship. Like I don't
yeah,
have to. And then if you spend too much time ruminating on it, I'm just like, we need a unilateral decision. I'm Mr. Unilateral decision. Break all these things, do this one thing, and now we're moving on. Let's get dinner. And
yeah,
you need both of those kinds and other kinds of people
yeah,
as well. When you think about like building a team though, so many people just want to like hire themselves again.
yeah.
Like, how do you make sure to not fall into that loop and be like, I like you, which means you probably are way too like me to like, if I want to have
Yeah,
a beer
that's
with you,
true.
it probably means I shouldn't hire you because I don't need another me in my business. I am the me of my
Yeah,
business.
yeah, yeah. I've never thought about it in such a clear way as the question has been put, but I suppose intuitively I've kind of gone down that path of thinking about I just think about how is this person going to remove stuff from my plate that I don't want to deal with. And so if I suppose if they are like me, that's chances are that they're not going to remove it to a large degree. So yeah, thinking that through. Yeah, and you touched on something interesting. I heard it said for data entry type mindsets is it's kind of like knitting. It's just a satisfaction, that repetitive task of knitting the stitch
Mhm.
after stitch. And I haven't seen it for a while, but you used to see people just sitting around everywhere knitting.
Yeah.
Um, but and they enjoyed that. I mean, I couldn't think of anything worse, but they just enjoyed the repetition and to see the output of eventually creating whatever that, a jumper or
Yeah, well,
whatever
they
it
have these
is.
when they wanted to make when they went to make the suits for astronauts for the first like missions in space, they had to get people who could literally stitch into the same hole and never create new holes. Like,
Oh
and
yeah,
so they had to find people, and they ended up finding people who sew bras. They were the only people who could hit
right.
the tolerances that they need to make sure that, like, you don't think about that. Like, in order to make a spacesuit, they had to make something that could last in space, which means fewest holes possible
Yeah,
and like really no excess holes. And like I couldn't do that. I wouldn't have even thought to be like, oh, let's hire somebody to like stitch real good. I wouldn't even thought that was like a thing. And so it's great to have the person who can stitch good, the person who's like, we're going to the moon, and the person who can be like, let us figure out how to actually get to the moon. And you need all of those people working
yeah.
together to really have a business and other kinds of people too.
Yeah, well, that's probably a great analogy for where we're going as a world as well. So to think about, so if you're a brass stitcher and you're awesome at brass stitching, but AI is going to come along and take away that uh, role in the workforce, well, then how do you reshape your skill set into something that's new? Where's the world going? Where's your career path going, or your business? What's the trajectory looking like? Because technology is changing everything. And how do you position yourself in readiness for whatever that new thing is to take your skill set from one place to another? That takes creative mindset, but that's applying your skill in one field to something else. I think that's those that can do, because everyone's worried a little bit about job displacement and what's going to happen, particularly employees. Um, they're thinking about what's going to happen with my role eventually.
Right.
I think if those that can think through reapplying their skill set to something slightly differently are going to be the big winners.
But don't you think though that like I got in business specifically to work with cool people to do cool things. And
Yeah,
like I always surprises me when I talk to other entrepreneurs who are like, I can't wait to like offload things to AI. And I'm like, that's literally the opposite of why I got in. Like I have there's no fun in that part. Like fun is in like having you make a website for me and being like, why did you make all of these crazy decisions, man? Like if I know why you're doing those things, like I don't know. Like, I think, don't you think there's like some percentage of people, high percentage of people that like actually don't want to automate their businesses away constantly or like want to automate
yeah,
them to other humans? I always makes me so sad when people say things like that. Like,
yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, things are changing in a way that we don't all like. It's kind of like we call them supermarkets. You'd probably call it grocers, where it's automated. So there's lots of people are really frustrated that they don't get to go through the checkout and talk to the person
right.
anymore. They get to scan their stuff through. So I think just that counter idea and philosophy, if you were to think about the way in which everyone's going and go the exact opposite, there's probably massive opportunity in there. It's just a matter of figuring out how to make it viable. And so thinking about your business and not just following the herd because they're having success and they're being profitable and all that stuff. There's probably remnants of other ways of thinking about it that are going to be niches that are equally valuable, but just you've got to find ways to make them viable in a different way. So that's the creative that people like you will find those little niches and opportunities that have been left behind. It's kind of like what you were saying before. You create a path and you bash down new opportunities. Pave a new way, and in the behind you comes people who pop up in different businesses. Creating that new pathway forward is going to be really really important, I think.
Well, it's like I think about swords. Okay, so like swords were really important until about what, the 1920s when we stopped after World War One, we no longer had cavalry, right? But like there's still blacksmiths. There's still people
Yeah,
that like make by hand horseshoes.
yeah,
And like again, like you said, there's an opportunity. Like there's an opportunity whenever someone leaves a group of things behind, because some amount of people will still want that thing. Like there's
yeah,
no earthly reason why anyone on this planet should want a sword. Like
yeah,
there's no utilitarian benefit of having a sword. Like if you need a utilitarian benefit, a knife is much more versatile and a gun is much more deadly. So, and
yeah,
yet I could name probably 20 or 30 people off the top of my head who like have swords. And in the
yeah,
same way, just like what you're saying, it's like, well, I don't know. In my brain, we just eventually leave AI, like the internet to AI. And we're just like, they just like the AI can talk to itself. And like the bunch of people are just like, I don't know, man. Like it's just, I don't want to hear an AI talk to myself. And like they're like, I'm just gonna not be on social media anymore. And like I'm gonna do over here and I'm gonna make a knitting circle. And it's just
yeah,
gonna be like the 70s for those people.
yeah. It's the kind of what's that religious group who don't buy into any technology?
Quakers,
The which one?
Quakers or the Quakers or the Amish or
The Amish I was thinking of, yeah, but any of those groups. I mean, sometimes in life it feels like, oh man, I just wish I could just go live like the Amish. So I think there's value in that, but just thinking about things in different ways. I mean, years and years ago in Australian history, we had the gold rush. I know that happened in other parts of the world as well, but it's said that so many people came looking for gold opportunities. I guess they're entrepreneurial, sailed around this, from the other side of the planet here to find gold. But the people who really made a lot of money were those who were making shovels.
yeah, absolutely. Or
So
like
yeah,
Levi Strauss is a big one that like made their living selling jeans to like they sold jeans to gold rushers. That's what they 49ers, that's what
right,
they did.
yeah, yeah. So there's just these little opportunities that pop up that no one really thinks about until in hindsight they go, oh yeah, of course they need some robust pants to wear in the gold rush, or they need some shovels, or there's probably a bunch of other things that could have been sold, and that's far more predictable because trying to find a piece of gold in the mountains or however they did it in the rivers might be pretty tricky. But big reward, big risk that you find nothing, but low risk in making a product that everyone needs and uh, a reliable income.
Well, but to say, like, to go back to the thing we talked about at the front, where like you're working with construction companies and like you found this niche, that's what I think like the real opportunity is in that's what capitalism is all about. It's like, how do you make like a cozy little nook for yourself in this
Yeah.
capitalist world that like you can be satisfied like with whatever that thing is, and it may be $100,000, maybe $1 million, maybe $10 million. Like it may be an audience of 100 or 1,000 or 1 million. I don't know what those numbers are, but like the benefit of this idea of capitalism is that you can say, all right, like I don't like the hyper-capitalism stuff. Like, or
Mm.
like this is where my benefit is now. This is where my little nook is now. And this is the niche that I have. And you have access to 8 billion people instead of 1,000 people or 100,000 people in your town. And you can actually say, I want to serve websites to people in Queensland, Australia, and only construction companies. And
Mm,
that can be like a thing that you do and make a good living in. And we're always looking at like, oh, what's the hyperscaling version of this thing? But
yeah,
like mostly you don't have to sell jeans to people. Usually people want jeans. They buy them because they don't rip anymore. And so every time somebody is like trying really hard to sell me a thing, I'm like, that's really interesting, buddy. Why do you have to sell that so hard? Shouldn't it just be like if it's good, I should obviously like it should be an obvious choice for me to make.
yeah. Yeah, it turns into a more of an idea that they're buying, you're not necessarily selling, but and it changes the way in which you go about business. There was a really cool, there's an old book, I think it's called The Science of Getting Rich or something like that. The
Mhm.
author, someone Wallace, have you bumped into that book?
Yeah, yeah, I have.
Really,
Yeah.
really old one. And the concept of the science of getting rich, what, and I'll butcher how it was said, but it was something along the lines of creating more use value than cost value is the way of getting rich. And I think that's a good way of looking at it. The
Yeah.
more value you can provide to the end user, well, they're buying it, and you haven't got to work hard to sell because it's just an obvious balance of value in that. So it's an interesting way of looking at it. And the other thing you touched on is a lot of the bigger companies, they're compelled to go for more all the time because I mean, particularly if it's a listed company, they're obliged to do everything in the best interests of the shareholders. So that's one way of thinking about it, and sometimes they're forced to do so. But as a small business, you don't have to go for the biggest and greatest of opportunities. You just need to find something that creates sustainability for you and your small team and business, and that might be plenty. That might be an abundance for a smaller business, and that opportunity is just far too small for the bigger players to go for. So finding those little opportunities is where it's at for small. And I think the good part of AI is solo entrepreneurs are going to be able to run successful, sustainable businesses um, more easily than they ever
Mhm.
have done before. It's just about finding those little pieces that everyone's left behind.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm very AI positive, like we're a very AI positive company, but like I do sometimes look like you're selling a little hard there, buddy. Like Mythos is going to is so dangerous that you can't release it. Like it seems like a marketing spin going on here and um so I really appreciate you stopping by today and talking about it's been about an hour. We're nearing the end of our time together and you have not talked about any of the things that you do. So I would love to just hear like how people like what kinds of people you're looking to work with, like what would drive people? Like are you looking for designers also or it's kind of we don't do construction, so like what do we like how are we working together?
Yeah, well, all sorts of people might be listening to the show, and that's cool. So, as you mentioned before, we do websites for construction businesses, industrial brands, those sorts of things. People might want to just jump onto the website out of curiosity's sake and see what we're up to. It's uplift360.com.au, an Australian website, but if you did jump on there, you'll see brands from all over the world that we've worked with. And you can book a strategy call if it seems as though there's resonance with whatever you're doing. And I'm happy to even chat to other entrepreneurs and creative people as well about how, you know, whatever they want to chat about really. As I said, I'm a
Sure.
human person. I like to talk to people. So happy to do a strategy call with them. No
Amazing, man.
obligations. Yeah.
Amazing, man. Well, thanks so much for stopping by and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Russell. Great to chat.